And welcome to this episode of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. Well, how are you today? I hope you're doing well, taking a little bit of time for yourself, and welcome to today's program. Let me start out today by just asking a question. If I was to go into your home, I would probably see furniture arranged in a particular way. I would probably see various different furnishings and accoutrements and knickknacks and paddywhacks, as they say, and things that really kind of reflect who you are and what interests you have. Maybe you're a pipe collector. Maybe you collect belt buckles. Maybe you have, taxidermied mounts on your wall. Maybe you have trophies from bowling. Chances are, if I walk into your home, even if I get into your car, I'm going to find various things that kind of give me a bit of a story about you and what you like and what you pursue, what your ideals are. You know what? Those are all very wonderful things. But here's a question for you. When I look at your portfolio, your retirement portfolio, the thing that you have spent decades trying to grow and compound and make larger so that you could retire, if I was to look at that portfolio, what would your portfolio and the holdings within it tell me as an advisor? Maybe you've never thought of that question. Maybe you don't understand the significance of it. You see, our portfolios, what we invest in, who we invest in, how we invest, all of those things should be a direct reflection of who we are, what we prize, what we value, what we find to be important. Now, some of you are probably saying, but I don't know enough to have my portfolio reflect me. Well, that may be true, but you have no doubt a relationship with an advisor, or you have the ability of being able to control how you invest your money, even if it's something as simple as your 401k at work. And so today we're going to be discussing this because, well, when it comes to how we invest our money, and especially the direction that we are going with our money, and the transitions that we all make in life as we make that transition from working to retirement, well, we want to be able to make certain that our portfolio, what we are investing in, how we're investing, it's keeping up to date with those transitions as we make them. Now, if you're new to today's program, I just want to say a warm welcome. Welcome to a program that strives every single week to take and discuss something that's relevant, something that's practical, something that you can learn from, something that you might be challenged by. And if there's maybe a desire to learn more about certain topics, well, I have a deal for you. If you go to our website, johnsonwim.com, as in wealthincomemanagement.com, not only will you be able to go back and see and watch many of the YouTube videos that I've recorded over the years, but it also gives you the opportunity of being able to listen to past radio shows. There's even as much as white papers discussing various different financially relevant topics that you can search and you can look through and find a topic that is of interest to you and hopefully learn more. If you're the reader type, I also encourage you, get a copy of my book, The Capitalized Retirement, something that's practical, something that's easy to read, something that no doubt will be able to maybe challenge your thinking on how you've been taught a successful retiree should have their money invested. If you're like many, you've always been taught that he who saves the most amount of money wins. When in reality, most people can save a lot, but have very little income to live on. And I know that sounds completely backwards, but it happens all too often. So get a copy of my book, The Capitalized Retirement, so you too can learn how to properly take everything that you've worked so hard to save and to accumulate and turn it into an income stream that you can't ever outlive. So let's get into this topic of, is the portfolio really a reflection of who you are? And so I'm going to drop the terminology cognitive dissonance one more time in your lap. Something that I find to be very intriguing, very fascinating, but something that is all too important. Let's say that you are with a friend, you're having lunch with a friend, and your friend is going on and on about how healthy they eat and how they exercise. And while she's sitting there at the table and she's telling you about how healthy she is, she's eating a giant slice of cheesecake, wolfing it down with a sugary pop, and also getting a dollop of ice cream in a saucer bowl. You might think, well, man, what she's saying versus what she's doing is two totally different things. And you know what? I know, as cheesy as that example is, the reality is that so many individuals end up having that exact same thing take place within their portfolio. As a fiduciary and advisor, it's always been a welcomed accommodation to be able to tell people that they can drop off their portfolios and they can have their portfolios examined at absolutely no cost, just simply to get a second opinion. Now, this is something that I still do because I find it very important. Today, we are so used to being sold, we're so used to having people or institutions or firms or businesses perpetrate us and try to go after the sale. It becomes very challenging to even trust anyone. Well, the reality is that we don't know what we don't know, and sometimes what we don't know can hurt us. And this is the reason why portfolio analysis is so very important. If you're just having your portfolio analyzed simply by your advisor, I would suggest that it may be wise to have a second opinion. In the same way that we may have the second opinion when our primary doctor has told us that we need to undergo a major surgery and we kind of question whether or not it's really necessary. Well, the same thing can be said when it comes to something as important as our portfolio. What I would challenge you on is really this. All too often, when I ask a person why they work busy and were busy and they sacrificed and they did without in order to be able to deposit money into a 401k or into a 403b, most of the time the answer is, well, I wanted to deposit money there so that I could grow it so I could save it for retirement. Okay, well, problem solved. You win. Game over. So you deposited money, you saved the money, and here it is. Are you sure that you didn't save it so that you could have retirement income? And the answer is, oh yeah, well, yeah, that was the main point. I can't retire and just live on Social Security. I have to have more income than that. So I saved this money in this retirement account so that I could have supplemental retirement. Now, all of those answers are really good. But yet when I look at portfolios from time to time, I would say, in fact, most of the time, I find that there is absolutely zero affiliation, zero connection to safety, and zero connection to income. In other words, most portfolios over the course of time, because they are not well managed, they become dingy, they become kind of disorganized, they become kind of, well, here and there. There really doesn't seem to be any sense of purpose or focus. They're just kind of random accounts that are going in this direction and this direction. Recently, I met with a couple in New York. And of course, with the beautiful form of technology that we have today called the internet, we can host meetings from people clear across the globe if we want to, as long as we can get our times right. And so I'm meeting with this couple and I'm asking them all the various different questions that I typically would. What's the purpose of you saving this money? One of the spouses was already retired. The other spouse was very close to retirement, but just a little bit younger, so still working. And then as I went through and I started looking over the various different statements and the holdings of the accounts, I started noticing that part of this account was actually allocated. It actually owned certain positions, and part of it, in fact, a large portion of it was actually cash, just sitting doing nothing. And when I began to ask the client, Tell me, why do you have 32% in cash? Why is 100% of this account over here in cash? Well, their answer was, I didn't realize it was in cash. So I think if I can give you a piece of advice, the very first thing is, even though I know that reading statements may not be your forte, reading statements may not be something that you think you have the capability of doing, if you would simply give it a shot, if you would simply sit down, put your glasses on, and begin to go through the statement, starting at page 1 and kind of working your way through the statement, you may find that reading your statement is a little simpler than what you may believe. And that accountability, that personal accountability to look through your statement and to look through all of your account statements to verify if things are going in a direction that you want them to go is super important. Many people just assume because they have an advisor, they have an institution, they have a guy, well, that account is being taken care of. But just like this couple they were completely unknowing that they had so much of their money sitting in cash, doing absolutely nothing, charging them fees, but actually losing because they were being charged more than they were actually making in interest. Well, these are some of those things that can hurt you, even if you don't know that you have them. So let me ask you this question. When it comes to growing your assets, why do you want to grow the assets? Is it so that you can have more money in retirement? Is your situation similar to this couple in Buffalo, New York, where this couple was saving and working hard to save and accumulate so that they could supplement their retirement income because they knew that Social Security simply wasn't going to be enough and they didn't have a pension? If the answer is yes to that question, then the second half of today's radio program, I really encourage you to stick around for. Because not only are we going to be discussing the importance of making certain that your portfolio reflects who you are and your values, but we also want to make certain that your portfolio is in anticipation of, it is designed, it is invested in anticipation of where you are going. Sit tight. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the second half of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source, located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. If you're just joining us, welcome to today's program. Today I'm asking a question: does your portfolio truly reflect who you are? This is an important question. All too often, you and I, we have values, we have ideals, we have things that we hold personally very important. For instance, I have many clients that, as Christians, they don't believe in abortion, they don't believe in things of that nature, and so as a result, they put restrictions on their portfolio where they don't want to be investing in certain pharmaceutical companies that would put forth and provide drugs that would facilitate abortion. Now, that may be a moral restriction. That may be just a values restriction. But I want to go even deeper. I want you to be thinking about, is your portfolio prepared? Is it actually allocated in anticipation of where you are going? You see, we really only have two different stages of life. When you and I are young, we're in our 20s, our 30s, our 40s, and our 50s. The reality is that we only have one job, and that job is to save. That job is to save as hard as we can, as consistently as we can, and be smart about it. Invest your money not in a mason jar, but rather invest your money in something that can grow, something that can compound. And why is that? Well, when you think about the rules, even the government tells us that if we're putting money towards a 401k or a 403b, we have money in an IRA or a Roth, we can't even really touch that money until we're 59 and a half. Now, I know when you're 30, that, man, that seems a long ways off. And it is. And in fact, that is the most ideal thing that you could probably link to or that you could touch on. Because you see, there's not much more that is important than time and interest on money. That is one of the most valuable assets that you have. And if you did nothing else but just deposit your money into the S&P 500 and a few different growth tools similar to that, over the next 20, 25, 30 years, you would likely be astounded as to how that money grows. But you know what? As you get closer to retirement, let's say you're within 5 years of retirement, well, you don't want to be as risky. You don't want to be taking the risk that you once did. And why do I say that? Well, we can point our fingers at various different times in the market in which the market declined significantly. We can go back to 2000 to 2003 when the market dropped 50%. We can look at the Great Recession of 2007, 8, 9, where the market dropped by more than 50%. We can look at COVID. We can look at 2022 and 2023. Various big times in which we saw the market drop significantly. But let me just talk about the tech bubble burst of 2000 to 2003. It wasn't the decline that was forever the pain. It was the decline and then the recovery. And you see, in the same way that you get that nick on your finger and it's painful and it seems like everything that you touch has to touch on that one point that you cut your finger. Well, you can't wait for it to heal. You can't wait for it to get better. And the reality is that when the market goes down, well, that's one thing. That's one leg of the journey. The other leg of the journey is watching for the recovery. And what we know is that during 2000 to 2003, the market might have lost 50% in 3 years, but it took an additional 4 years after that to recover. And you see, if you're within 5 years of retirement, this is the reason why we want to not give up growth. We're not looking to set growth to the side and say it's no longer important, but rather we want to analyze and be more careful about the risks that we're taking on. Because quite honestly, if we end up seeing a large bubble break within our market, and we are sitting at, almost world record highs, we want to realize mathematically that could jeopardize your retirement. You see, if you lost 30, 40, 50% of your retirement, chances are you're not going to feel comfortable retiring. You're going to continue to plod along, show up to work every day, get a paycheck, and hope, crossing your fingers and your toes, the market recovers. And it does so quickly. But does it ever? Not generally speaking. So we have to anticipate that if you're within 5 years of retirement, you now want to start adjusting your portfolio to now be a better reflection of where you're going. You want your portfolio to actually anticipate where you are going. It's funny, I specialize in income, in helping a person preserve their principal and maximize an income that they can't ever outlive. And so very often a client who's maybe been with me 3 or 4 years, not a terribly long time, they're getting ready to retire and they say, okay, well, we need to have a sit down. We need to discuss how we're going to turn on this income. And I explain to them, it's really pretty simple. You just tell me what day of the month you want, and I'll start distributing the dividends. You see, in their mind, it's something so complex. It's something so very big as a production or a process that they have to go through. But the reality is that it's not. It's a very simple process. You see, your principal, what you've worked so hard to be saving, should be growing. It should be increasing. But is it growing to its maximum capacity? That doesn't mean is it hitting newfound highs every single month. What I'm really asking is, are you taking the approach of growing your money through the known return as well as the unknown return? Now, if that doesn't make any sense to you, let me boil it down this way. If you buy a stock at $10 a share, number one, being that our portfolios are very, or should be, very good reflections of who we are, the companies that we're investing in should be, well, they should be companies we believe in. They should be companies that reflect our values. These should be companies that we're excited about, okay? Now, if you have absolutely no interest in investing, that's perfectly fine. You can have your financial advisor do that, but chances are you're going to have a few things in your portfolio that you really, really like. Maybe you're into cryptocurrency. Maybe you're into race cars. Maybe you're into, who knows? But I digress. When we're investing our money, we want to make certain that we're getting growth through interest and dividends. That's our principal producing something repeatable and predictable every single month. And this is important because while you are still working, you want the interest and the dividends to be there being produced every month so that those dollars can be used to buy more shares. Then you want your portfolio to also be focused, or at least to have a portion of it focused on growth through appreciation. And that appreciation, that growth, that's the fickle thing in life. We don't know if you're going to get it. We don't know if you're not. We know that sometimes we get it and the market goes up. Sometimes we don't and the market goes down. But even when the market is down, that's the beauty of the interest and the dividends, my friend. Because that means the interest and dividends being produced, which have no bearing. They don't get affected by the market being down. They just produce what they're going to produce. You get them every single year. Well, if the market's down, that's the buyer's opportunity. And so you see, when you think about your portfolio, if you know that you're headed towards retirement, you're getting there faster, more quickly. You know that you're in a position today where you can afford a little bit of risk, but not nearly as much as you could 20 years ago. This is where having the second opinion is so very vital. You see, business models, as we have talked about so very often, they dictate what we get. When you have a institution that you're working with and they're only about selling precious metals, well, guess what they're going to tell you is their very best investment when you ask them. If you have an advisor who is absolutely married to the stock market, he has nothing good to say about things that are safe. He just simply wants to invest in growth funds and growth stocks, and it's growth, growth, growth all the way. Well, guess what his opinion is going to be with respect to the very best investment that's out there. Speak to a realtor. Ask a realtor what the best investment is in their mind. And chances are you're probably going to get told that it's real estate. See, business models dictate your results. And though we want to grow, we want to expand and compound and appreciate the value of money that we have in our accounts. As we get closer to that day in which these dollars become so very vital to us and to our well-being and to our standard of living and to that chance of us to be able to hit the goal of checkmarking all of those bucket list items that we have, that we want to fulfill, that we want to be able to see and do. Well, my friend, number one, your principal needs to all still be there. And number two, your principal needs to be producing the income. And why is that important? Because anything else is just simply engineering it. You see, this couple in Buffalo, New York, little did they know that they had money sitting in cash. But there was two other areas that they were enlightened on when we did analysis. The first area was fees. They didn't realize what they were paying the various different institutions that they had money with. And this was important because, you see, if you do have a little bit of dividends, which is pretty common for most investors today, but yet the fee that is being paid is eating up all of the dividends, then you truly, honestly don't have any real income. And so this couple, they wanted to be able to draw at least $8,000 a month off from their portfolio, and yet they were actually in the hole. They were paying more in fees than they were making in dividends. So when it came time for them getting income, what was the advisor to do? The advisor only had one choice. He had to sell shares to get the income. And now, my friends, you understand the difference between having income the right way through interest and dividends and having to engineer it. Life is too short to have to stress in retirement. Your time in retirement is one to be valued, one to be having fun. Please make certain that your portfolio is a direct reflection of where you're going and who you are. And may you have more income than you need. I'm Matthew Johnson. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And remember, it's up to you to make today a great day.